welcome to Awakening Wednesday. I'm so blessed and grateful that you're here, even though there's mystical little gremlins that are running around. But I'm very happy to have a wonderful, dynamic member of our congregation, minister of our congregation, that is expanding us consciously, lovingly, and absolutely opening us up to greater understanding of consciousness. And tonight, Reverend Sherry is our guest speaker. She is going to bring to us release and forgiving. And so to set the mode to get us into that space, we'll open with a little video. And so, staying in that wonderful space of openness, here's a prayer to remind us of the oneness that we sit in. So I know that there is one spirit, one life beating my heart and yours, breathing us, sending us love and giving us love to send forth to others. And no matter what we do, no matter what we say, this love opens its arms, embracing us and forgiving us, loving us. And so we release into our greatness. And so we know this evening is blessed and very blessed. We thank you, Spirit. And so it is. So taking those thoughts into our hearts, I have a special song for you.
How could anyone ever tell you anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you? How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul. How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected.
Indeed. How could anyone tell us otherwise? And so, tonight, wherever you are, beloveds, I'm so glad you're watching and joining us tonight. To love and be loved, forgiving and release. And we're doing it during this special time of Lent. And you're probably wondering, why Lent? I don't celebrate Lent. Well, stand by, because I'll be exploring more about that. But before I do, I remember a story about a Christian school. The teacher was, the curriculum was learning about the holiday, the holy day seasons, the annual seasons around the year. And so the teacher asked one of the students, kind of just see where they were at, these younger students, what's the meaning of Christmas? So one raised their hand enthusiastically and said, oh, I know, Christmas is when Jesus is born. And we're happy about that. And she said, that's right. And we're happy, and so we celebrate and give gifts to each other and have parties. The teacher knew there was a little bit of more learning that needed to go on. So she went to the next student and said, could you explain the meaning of the season of Lent? The student thought for a moment and said, oh yeah, that's when the disciples didn't have enough bread and fish to eat. So they went to their rabbi, their teacher, Jesus, and said, we need bread and fish. So Jesus lent them his basket, and Jesus said, you see that big crowd over there? Go ask them for some food. And they did. And you know what? There was lots and lots and lots of food and even leftovers. So Lent teaches us how to share. Well, okay, so that's a little take on Matthew, the book of Matthew in the New Testament, Matthew 14. So you may be wondering, well, Sherry, we're already in the middle of Lent. Lent goes up till Easter, April 9th. Why are we talking about Lent? And in Science of Mind, why do we talk about Lent? Isn't that a Christian celebration? Or celebration isn't the right word. A holy season, a holy time? Some of us raised in the Christian tradition, like myself, may remember Lent as a real somber time. You know, it was in anticipation of Christ's crucifixion, which was then followed by Easter. But Lent itself was a somber time for reflection. And I don't know about you, but I remember it as a time of having to give up things that we like chocolate. Now that was hard for me because I was born in Hershey, Pennsylvania. That's right, chocolate town. I've got chocolate in my blood. My family loved chocolate. So we gave up things that we liked. And some of you may even have done some fasting of food, abstaining from certain foods or foods altogether during the daytime, and then eating only when the sun went down. So why do we do this? Getting to that in a moment. Did you know that there wasn't Lent in the Bible? There's no mention of it. There's no mention of Lent by the founder of Science of Mind and Spirit, the spiritual teaching that I am a minister in. Now, so how come we do Lent? And well, in a 2017 poll, it said that about a quarter of Americans, 25%, still observe Lent. And it doesn't have to be so sad in this giving up. All of us of any faith, and so here's why we might do it, can use Lent as a time for focusing on spiritual practices, like spiritual reading, prayer, meditating, but especially focusing on the practices of forgiveness and releasing things, releasing negative beliefs. And we do that to deepen our awareness of our connection with Spirit, our oneness with that great all, the I Am, Spirit. And we'll get to forgiveness and release a little bit more in just a bit. The founder of Science of Mind, Ernest Holmes, said, we can use practices, we can look at the golden thread from all kinds of faiths. We're not to discount any of them, because there's many paths to God. And so tonight, we're looking at the Christian experience of Lent and how we can use it in our own experience of Spirit. So Lent. Well, first, where does that word come from? Lent is an Anglo-Saxon word from lengthen, to mean to lengthen. It even sounds like lengthen. Well, lengthen what? Well, Lent, and then followed by Easter, is always in the spring. And what happens in the spring? The days get longer. There's more daylight and less nighttime. It seems that the days lengthen, and we look forward to it. Ancient peoples look forward to that new growth in spring, the new growth of the fields, for it meant plenty, that the harshness of winter, whatever climate, wherever in the world they were, was going to pass. And so this lengthening, this time of Lent, is traditionally 40 days, excluding Sundays, the weeks before Easter, and to fast or deny oneself pleasures, like the chocolate I mentioned, or maybe something else that you like to do or think about. And it was 40 days was chosen because 40, metaphysically, spiritually, represents a time of transition. And also, 40, historically, in the stories in the New Testament, is the time, the amount of days that Jesus spent in the wilderness, fasting and praying, where, as the story goes, he was tempted by the devil with power and saying, you're fasting. You can just make these stones turn into bread. You're the Son of God, after all. Jesus resisted the temptation. So in the same vein, we use those 40 days to go within, to reconnect with who we are. Now, that for Jesus, that was the beginning of his ministry. He came from that desert and deserted place to begin his ministry of healing and teaching, the great teacher and rabbi that he was. Now, it wasn't until the Lent as, well, I won't say as we know it, but the official church Lent didn't begin till 325 CE, Common Era, also known as AD. And it was started by the Roman Emperor Constantine I. He called together a gathering, a council of churches from all over the Roman realm. Because you see, at the time, there was some already, now this is almost 300 years after Jesus lived, right? 325 AD or CE. Already there were discrepancies about how churches celebrated things, how they did the rituals, which Constantine called heresies. So he wanted to rule out the heresies. And so they met together to look at those, bring some uniformity in the practices in the Eastern and Western Christian churches, and to make decrees about how things should be done. So one tradition that survives from that time is wearing purple. Now, purple is still used in the vestments, the robes and the clothing of ministers and priests during Lent, especially in Christian churches, and in the wall hangings and the decorations in the sanctuaries. for two reasons. Purple is can be a somber color, but it also was a very expensive and hard to use dye, and it was usually reserved back in the day only for royalty. And of course, Jesus was seen as being descended from King David, very famous and one of the most powerful ancient Jewish kings. And so to celebrate Jesus coming as a royal king to liberate the Jews, I'm not saying that's what all people believe, but this is why the purple was used. Now I'm wearing purple to honor that, but also because it's my favorite color. So we have many reasons for wearing colors. So fasting was another tradition that came about for Lent. Again, kind of reflecting back to the fasting that Jesus did when he was in the desert for those 40 days and nights. And so this practice of fasting can help us focus our intention, our mind, and our consciousness on things of spirit rather than things of corporeal things, of things of the body, of the worldly and human things. Well, I was going to say if done right, but there's many ways to do fasting, and they're all good. So fasting is not particular just to Lent or any one faith, but it, as I said, is often practiced by Christians, again, as a time of self-reflection, going within, and focus on renewing and being aware of one's relationship with God. So ancient people of many faiths, as I mentioned, also fasted. Fasting can be used for health, for mental discipline, for increasing one's vital energy. The Mesoamericans, the early Americans, before Columbus came, used the practice of fasting. In ancient Japan, back in early centuries of that time, fasting was a part of saving food. It was forbidden, get this, it was forbidden to eat the meat of domestic animals, which usually were owned by the ruler, the emperor, during 6 months, half of the year. You were not supposed to eat meat. Fish was okay, wild animals were okay. So fasting has been about for a long time and for many different reasons. So there's no hard and fast rules about fasting. In Christian history and Lent, the fasting rules have changed, as all human-made rules do. Right? So again, early on in Christian faith, the early centuries, during the fasting time, only one meal was allowed per day in the evening. They could eat fish or eggs or butter or meat. Now, these rules have gradually relaxed in the Christian church. And it was even dispensed of, it was gotten rid of, suspended during World War II because of all the resources were going to the soldiers and people in the war. So there's this shift in Lent. And I'm almost done with the history of it, and then we'll get into forgiveness and release. Writer Tara Burton says, or complains, she wrote an article, Lent has become secularized, reimagined as another opportunity for a kind of spiritual wellness cleanse, she puts in quotes, whether it's food or drink or social media habits, and a second chance at kickstarting those neglected New Year's intentions. Well, personally, that all sounds good to me. Spiritual cleanse, reconnecting with spirit. But each of us can find those rituals and spiritual practices that enrich our lives and enrich our spiritual path. All right, so about forgiveness. Let's dive deeper into that and applying it to our lives. So forgiveness is one of the practices that we can do during Lent. What is that? The traditional concept of Lent usually takes two forms. An outer form of forgiveness, I forgive you. I try not to judge, or at least judgment about someone else's thoughts or actions. So that's the outer. Then there's also an inner forgiveness. To release any hurts or wounds around words or actions that I think of about myself, or that I perceive as being directed at me. Somebody criticizing me for the way I wear my hair, or I'm not enough, kind of a bigger thing. Forgiveness. Now what's interesting, I talked about this outer and this inner. There's another kind of forgiveness that is spoken of. God's forgiveness. But if you really think about it, God doesn't forgive us or need to forgive us, for we're made in whose image? God's image. We are the piece, we are the part of spirit. Our spiritual being is already whole and well. God loves us unconditionally. Now you may be thinking, no, hold on a moment, Rev Sherry. What about, don't we make mistakes that we regret? Sure. But it's not a sin that needs to be forgiven, at least not in our faith, in our belief in science of mind. It's not a permanent stain on our souls. Because we can look at what we did, if it wasn't 100% helpful, and we can, the old-fashioned word was repent. We can apologize. We can take responsibility for our thoughts or our actions, strive to do better. What an interesting way to think about forgiveness. Emma Curtis Hopkins, who was Ernest Holmes' teacher, Ernest Holmes, again, the founder of Science of Mind and Spirit, gave some definitions of forgiveness. And I love these, so I'm going to throw some at you and see if any of these kind of resonate for you. She said, forgiveness is permission to move forward. Think about that, because if we don't forgive, we're kind of stuck in wallowing in whatever the past was, right? Whatever we thought happened to us. Another one, she said, forgiveness is not suffering damage of something or some words or action. Not taking it personally. Emma Curtis Hopkins also said, forgiveness is allowing someone harmless passage through your mind. It's kind of poetic. Harmless passage through your mind. So when I'm thinking of someone and I'm like, I didn't really like what they did or say, those people on TV, the leaders, the powers that be, but instead of kind of going into that negative space, judging and criticizing, observing, let just the thoughts of them just kind of pass through our minds in a harmless way. Because we're told in Scripture, thou shalt not judge. We're not to judge one another. Because again, we focus on the L word, love. All right, so some more forgiveness definitions. It's knowing that who you are is greater than anything you have gone through. Who you are is greater than anything you've gone through. So, I know some friends who had in their past a challenge with addiction. Forgiveness is for them letting that go and knowing they're greater than that. Their soul, their spirit is greater than that addiction, that behavior. So just one example. You probably can think of something in your own life. You are not what you've gone through. You are greater than that. And finally, Emma says, forgiveness is giving up blame so we can advance. Advance to what? Our greater selves, our greater beingness. So from his teacher, Ernest Holmes Learning, he says, through forgiveness, we can become free now. If we dwell on that stuff in the past, all those negative thoughts or things we think were not so great, we can be stuck there, or we can observe that going by and say, okay, that was the past, this is now, and we can become free, Holmes says. freedom of that self-blame and shame. And just one more thought about forgiveness before we talk about release. In A Course in Miracles, that's both a book and studies on knowing about oneness, approaching oneness with God through love. And in A Course in Miracles, it says, forgiveness, recognize that what you thought another one did to you has not occurred. Let me say that again. Forgiveness recognizes that what, I'll say, I thought another did to me hasn't really occurred. It goes on to say, forgiveness does not pardon sins because that would be making them real. It sees there was no sin. There was no sin. And so in that view, all your sins are forgiven. Because what is sin? Still reading this quote. What is sin except a false idea about you, about yourself? Forgiveness sees the falsehood of sin and therefore lets it go. And then we are free. What's free to take its place now is the will of God. When we let go of the idea of sin that damns me forever, a misstep that I can never get over, that they'll never love me, that I'll be ostracized. Those are non-things. They're not true. They were just a thought in a moment. We have the choice to dissolve those. And when we recognize, I'm going to come back to this again, when we recognize our oneness in spirit, meaning my oneness with spirit, your oneness with spirit, the great I am, we also recognize our oneness with each other and forgive one another. So forgiveness, I like this other, last definition I like. There's one more. Forgive. For means going forward or toward. We are giving love, passing it or paying it forward. Forgiveness. A song to take us into that.
There was a time in my life, thought I had to do it all for myself. I didn't know the grace of God was sufficient, and I didn't know the love of God was at hand. Well, I can see you are scary, struggling just to make it through another day. You got to let it go. Let it all go. And this is what you have to say. I believe in I let go.
I release and I let go. Can you just imagine what our lives would be like if we could release and let go of negative thinking, of egotistical thoughts, of hate, of anything that is not, that puts down life, life expressing itself. I love this acronym by Dr. James Mellon. He coined a phrase from the letters in the word Lent, L-E-N-T, and he says it represents, let's eliminate negative thinking. Let's eliminate negative thinking. Lent. Not always easy, but it's possible. We are able to choose our thoughts. And whatever thoughts we choose, whether they're this way or that way, negative or positive, it's what we experience in our life. We might think on the negative side, love is out to get me. Or, I'm less than beautiful, perfect, and whole. Wah, 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 wah. All that negative stuff. Ernest Holmes, going back to Ernest Holmes again, Uncle Ernie. He said, life is a mirror and reflects back to the thinker what they reflect into it. Reflect into it. So just think of yourself standing in front of a mirror. Maybe it's in the morning and you're kind of a little disheveled and you're out there and just go, ugh, I'm just not a pretty sight. Or, I don't know what he or she sees in me. I'm just not that. That mirror tells the truth, right? It reflects right back to us what we just said. So we can choose to turn that around. We can say to that mirror, yeah, I just got up, but I know that I am beautiful. There's the only me. Nothing else has been created me. I am a unique expression of spirit. Yay, God, good job. I'm going to go out into the day. Carpe diem. I'm going to seize the day. There's also the idea that if we can just realize our spiritual perfection, and I say spiritual because that's the core of us, that inner enough. If we could just realize, recognize that, then we couldn't help but heal all areas of our life instantly, whether it's health, wealth, creativity, or relationships. We good in the ear? A wonderful way to release negative thinking is through spiritual mind treatment, also known as affirmative prayer. And if you've listened to any of the videos or talks from Universal Spirit Center, you know we talk about prayer a lot. And, well, it's Lent, so let's pray. There's a couple parts to the prayer. In that kind of affirmative prayer, we acknowledge God is everything, and well, God's everything, well, I'm a part of that everything. I'm a part of God too. And then we affirmatively state what thought or expression of our life that we want, but we declare it in the first person. We declare it affirmatively. It's happening right here and now. So I might say, I am at peace and I am blessed. Or we might be more specific. I know I am getting the perfect job. Or I know my kid gets into college because I am seeing that, I am picturing that, and they've done everything the steps, and I love them, and I've supported them. We say it in the present tense. We affirm that. And then, once we've pictured this, we get into that feeling of it, then we know gratitude. We're grateful to Spirit for these blessings flowing into our lives, and we release our prayer to the divine action of Spirit, and we know it's so. So what does it have to do, release? It's saying, I'm not going to do that negative stuff. I'm going to know this, and once I know it and pray it, I take a breath, and I just release it to God, knowing that God's got it, God's working on it. It's going to happen. It is in the works. It's happening here and now. And so we might say that Lent, L-E-N-T, is leaning easily into my new transformation. Okay, so I added a few little words in between. Leaning into next or new transformation. We are transformed. So by releasing, we can go into that greater to be. One of the things that, a practice that you can try during Lent is a consciousness raising tracker. This was thought up by Reverend Dr. Patrick Harbula, whose workshop I attended at the latest Science of Mind convention. And he says, pick an intention that you want for Lent. Not, I'm depriving myself, I'm getting rid of this, but something you want to bring into your life. And then, each evening, go back and think throughout the day and say, what percentage of the time when I was thinking of that intention, not how much of the day were you thinking about it, but when I did think of that intention, was I thinking, ugh, I'll never get that, or I'm so far away from that, or were you thinking positively? Oh, okay, I'm taking steps towards that, I'm achieving that. What percentage of the time were you thinking negatively about your intention versus, well, let's put it this way, what percentage of the time were you thinking positively about your intention? Like, my intention is to get out and walk more, at least 4 times a week, and get healthy. So, did I do it 0%? I didn't think of it at all today. I forgot. Or when I did think of it, maybe 15%. Write it down. Write that down between now and Easter, April 9th. And what you should notice is that your subconscious kind of picks up on that. And you'll see those percentages of the good, thinking positively, increases. Now, don't focus on more than one thing at a time. Because you can, after Easter happens, then you can pick something else to work on and let it happen. Because we set our intention to release what isn't and for the positive, it works. So we can use this time of Lent as a time of raising our consciousness to God, that we are one with that. We can use it to think about forgiveness as moving toward love, non-judgment, being more loving. And we can release all that thoughts and that baggage, that stuff that just isn't true about us. And so I'd like to do a little experience, a brief experience of looking at release. So I invite you to just settle into a chair or wherever you are. Take a few breaths, maybe roll your shoulders back. Close your eyes if you wish. And picture someone you really love and who loves you for who you are. It could even be a pet, right? They have unconditional love. Picture that person or that pet and its unconditional love for you. Feel that love. What does it feel like? Is it warmth? Maybe it's a nice tingle feeling. It's feeling alive, feeling supported and warm and loved. Where in your body do you feel that love? And just sit in that for a moment. Okay, so you picture that. Now we're going to change the image a little bit. Picture someone who challenges you. It could be somebody in your family, someone you know personally at work or school. It could be somebody popular or famous on media or TV. Somebody who kind of presses your buttons when you see them or you interact with them. Now what's the feeling? Maybe there's a bit of tightening, maybe a little chill, maybe a feeling of wanting to run away or withdraw. Where in your body is that feeling? What is that feeling and where do you feel it? Just sit with that for a few moments. Now remember to breathe. And now we're going to bring back that loving feeling, remembering that person who loves you unconditionally. Bring that love back in and let that uncomfortableness of that challenging person or idea fade away. Bring that love back into your body and your consciousness. And you can ask for Spirit's guidance in helping you see that challenging person as a divine child of God. For yes, all of us are from the Creator. Feel the releasing of your judgment about them. Perhaps you might picture a colorful flight of balloons being released into the atmosphere. Or a bunch of doves taking flight, white doves flying up, uplifting and flying up and away, taking away those negative feelings. And then from your heart center, send that challenging person love. Yes, love. And then also, now taking a breath, picture yourself also receiving that love. Bring that unconditional love of Spirit, that universal love, into your heart center. Sitting with that for a few moments. Do you feel lighter, tingly, peaceful even? And know that you can return to that wonderful love, warm love feeling anytime, and the awareness it brings. Taking a breath. Now bring your awareness back to your space where you are and open your eyes. I'm going to close with this portion of our time together tonight. An adaptation of the prayer by St. Francis of Assisi. And maybe you want to put your hand on your heart and know these words for yourself. I release hatred and embrace love. I release my grievances and embrace forgiveness. I release doubt and embrace faith. I release darkness and despair, knowing my life is filled with goodness and light. I allow myself to feel all my emotions and then release them and embrace the peace of God. Have a blessed Lent.
Open wide my heart. Open wide my heart. Open wide my heart. Open wide my arms. Open wide my arms. You are the face of God. I hold you in my heart. You are a part of me. You are the face of God.
Thank you, Reverend Sherry, for that beautiful, beautiful journey of releasing and forgiving. We are blessed to be a part of a community that is consciously aware of the power of abundance, of prosperity. That each of us, we help expand this world, we help change our world, and we prepare a day for a new beginning. So for each and every one of you that has contributed to Universal Spirit Center, thank you, thank you, thank you. And for each and every one of you that are thinking about it, we give thanks and praise. There's many ways that you can give. You can go online. I'll put up our QR code. You can also use the QR code as well. It is just a true blessing to be a part of this financial prosperity journey with each and every one of you. So I thank you for being here tonight. I thank you for your love and patience. I thank you for all that you do. It is truly an honor to be a part of this journey with you.
You are my family. You are the face of love. You are the face of love. I hold you in my heart. You are my family. You are the face of love. You are the face of God.